Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting and inspiring episode of the Inspired Life Vancouver. I'm your host, Zara Durrani. It's been a complete pleasure bringing you some amazing local guests who are making a positive impact in their communities. Joining me today is a talented designer who's been in the industry for over 2 decades. If you go to Vancouver, farmers markets, local markets that take place here, you would be familiar with Irit Sorokin, who creates and designs amazing jewelry that is one of a kind. I'm wearing her beautiful earrings at the moment, if you can see them shining on camera. I've been familiar with Irit's work for quite some time. Her work is inspired by architecture, history, and also her travels. So Irit, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I love your jewelry. I am a complete fan. Now, with everyone who comes on the show, I love to ask them how they got started. Now, your jewelry, you have created some amazing pieces. Like, I remember meeting you at one of the local farmers markets. You mentioned that, oh, this is like a print or an imprint from a Roman coin. I find that so fascinating, that how you got started with going to Lebanon or Morocco or Egypt and finding these pieces. So what inspired you to do that?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say that I fell into jewelry designing. It was never my intention to become a jewelry designer, and it was through looking at the stones, the colors, and also having studied art history, looking at historical jewelry. I've always been inspired by that. So in 2003, I literally fell into jewelry design, not intentionally, and then started to seek out gemstones and findings within North America. And also because my husband and I and my family travel a lot. You know, we've always traveled a lot. We've always taken our kids to Europe and throughout their childhood, and now without our kids living at home, we continue to travel. And so when I travel, I'm always fascinated by the culture, by the architecture, by the history of art, and how people live. And we go into some really interesting places. For example, when we were in Morocco, we went up to the Atlas Mountains and into little villages, and I'll see little vendors selling things on the street in bowls. And because I have, I think, a pretty good eye, I'll see things that are really interesting, and I'll sort of dig in, and I'll go, wow, that looks like an old piece of charm or a pendant or something that looks like it has a story behind it, and I'll buy it. I never know what I'm going to do with it. I'll bring it home. This was one example of something that I found when I was in Morocco. And it's old.
So did you make like a copy of that, or this is the original?
This is the original, but I did make a copy out of wax. I took a wax impression, and so that way I can actually make more by casting it. So this is the original, and it's brass. And so I'll take something that's very old and I'll modernize it. I'll make it more fashionable. So the chain is I deal with a couple of companies that make chain for me. They're in the States, out of New York, and this is another finding that's modern. And so I've taken an old piece and I've modernized it. And this would be a one-of-a-kind piece. When I cast it, I'll be able to make a few more, but not a lot more. And that's how, when I'm at a market, people will ask me questions. And part of how I sell my jewelry is I'm able to talk about the story behind where I got the pendant or how I made it. My jewelry stands out, and every piece has a story behind it. Some of the pieces are much more delicate. This one stands up. It's a little bit more bold. But a lot of my pieces are delicate. Some are even bigger, and a lot of them just can't be replicated. So it's hard for me to sell in lots of stores. Although I used to sell in quite a few stores, I can't replicate a lot of them and sell them in many
I
stores.
love that part about it, though,
Yeah.
that it's so unique. You know, it's not something that you're like, okay, it's made. You know, like you're making it
I
here.
don't outsource it.
Yeah, you know, I love the fact that you're using your hands, you're going on your travels. Now, tell us about some of the countries you've been to and the pieces you've gotten, because you have so many amazing stories, and I love following your travels on social media. You'll be like in Egypt or Jordan, and tell us about that.
My husband and I travel. So this year I was in Israel and I was in Egypt for the first time. And Egypt was amazing. I mean, historically, we all know about historical Egyptian jewelry. I was able to go into some of the tombstones. I took pictures of the hieroglyphs. I was able to go into the Egyptian museum. And anywhere I went, I was inspired. I went into the souks or the shouks, or I don't know. It's
The markets.
the markets in Cairo. And I meet interesting vendors when I'm there, and I'll buy old pieces and I'll take them, and it's an individual piece, and I'll replicate it, and then I'll also design with it. I will create a piece of jewelry. I'll assemble it and I'll do something unique.
It's almost like you're an archaeologist. You're like on
In a
this
way.
mission. Like, I love the fact. I remember a necklace that I got from you. You're like, okay, this is an old Roman coin.
I love coins. I've been collecting coins, and and anyone who knows me and who has sold my jewelry in their stores in the past knows how much I love coins. So I was designing jewelry with coins before they were in style. Right now, coins are a big deal, and I was using coins for a long time, the original ones. And so I've taken the original ones and I've actually replicated them so that I'm able to sell more of them. And you were talking about traveling. So I've traveled. I lived in Denmark for a few years. I've lived in the US. We traveled to Morocco, Turkey, all over Europe. I've lived in Los Angeles. So all of that has inspired my jewelry designing. The exposure to fashion. I wouldn't say I'm a fashionista, but a lot of my jewelry can be worn every day by anyone from any age group. I have customers who are 16 up to someone who's in their 80s, even 90s, because they love sophisticated and interesting pieces. I continue to travel. We're trying to figure out where we're going to go this year. But I would say my last trip to Egypt was amazing. Also Morocco. Morocco was incredible. Finding some of the things in the villages. I went to places that nobody else would go to, like up in the hills, that you just don't see a lot of tourists. So I'm able to,
I love that.
get some interesting pieces when I'm there.
And I'm sure that when someone either gets a gift that is then a Irit Sorokin design, or even purchase it, then it plants the seed of, okay, I would like to go to Turkey, or I would like to go to Rome or Egypt and see what that is like. I think that is one of the coolest gifts that you can get. Like when I wear your designs, I remember when I first moved to Paris, I had this beautiful amethyst pendant that you gave me, and I would be like, okay, this is made with love, this is made by someone that I know, and it's giving me this healing essence. Do you feel like that when you're designing these jewelries, that you're putting like a part of yourself, but also your travels and like this, because you go on an adventure, you go on this mission as you're traveling and you're finding these interesting pieces. So not only they have this history behind them, but also your energy behind these pieces that you're creating.
Every piece means something to me. My aim is to create beautiful jewelry, and every piece of jewelry that I design, I wear. I love the stones. I never realized the healing properties of stones until I started making jewelry, and my studio is full of gemstones. I'm surrounded by them. And I guess my table must have good energy, because I have people who are really into the healing properties of stones, and they'll come to my table and they'll talk about the different stones, and they'll tell me, what good energy there is. And so when I'm in my studio, I don't play any music in my studio. It's quiet in my studio, and my benches are my canvas, and I will lay things out. All my designs are in my head. Sometimes I'll draw things out, but I will lay things out, and that is how I design. So my bench, my table is my canvas. And I have two benches. I have one where I'm assembling and I'm putting things together, and then another one where I'm doing the metal work and the wax work.
That's beautiful.
And it's a fairly decent sized studio, so.
That's wonderful. Now, what does beauty mean to you?
Beauty is something that makes the person who's wearing it feel good. It doesn't matter who it is or what they look like, as long as that the piece that they're wearing makes them feel confident and strong and good. As long as it makes the person feel good. And different people can wear, it doesn't matter what size you are, whether you're petite, you're big, you're small. I have really big rings, and I've got teeny weeny, women who are extremely petite, and they put on this ring and they're confident and they feel that they can wear that big ring. And other women who will put it on, they'll go, no, that's too big for me. So I think beauty comes from, if someone feels that a piece is beautiful because it's been designed by me, or it's got a story behind it and it makes them feel good, then it's a beautiful piece of jewelry.
I love that. Tell me about some interesting stories while you've traveled around the world, because I'm sure you must have quite a few.
Well, whenever I'm traveling, part of the best part about it is meeting the people who I will purchase pendants from. I'll stop and I'll try and use as much sign language, use my hands, because sometimes it's hard for us to communicate. But I found that most people understand just a little bit of English, no matter where you are.
Do you try to learn their language, or at least a few phrases before you go?
I try, but I'm not good with languages. So somehow we manage to communicate. It's sort of a universal language, using your hands and your gestures and just being kind to whoever it is that you're with, and trying to sort of learn a little bit about who they are and why they're doing what they do. And I love it. I mean, I love digging through bowls and just learning about a little village, or wherever I am, like in Morocco, walking around, looking at the antiques, looking at the culture, just watching people, learning about the architecture. My husband studied architecture. He works in the construction industry. And so he's out looking at buildings and taking pictures of buildings. I'm looking at buildings as well, but I'm also looking at people. So we make a pretty good team.
That's amazing.
And then we schlepped our kids around, all over Europe and to different places, and exposed them to that.
Did you guys travel quite a bit when you were younger, living in Israel? Because I know me, by the age of 7 with my family, we'd lived in 7 different countries, and I think that really implanted the seed and passion for traveling and also different cultures.
Well, I did not, when I was living in Israel, we didn't travel as a family, but then we moved to Denmark, and I lived in Denmark for 4 or 5 years. Then I came to Canada as a teen, and then since then I've lived in the U.S. I've lived in Los Angeles. I lived in Rome.
You have?
For 6 months, yeah. While my husband was in architecture school, it was part of a travel abroad program. When I was in Rome, I studied Italian through the Dante Alighieri Society. I took some courses. This is while I was in university. I took time off. So to be with him while he was doing his program, I took courses. I walked around Rome. We lived near Trastevere, near the Campo de' Fiori, which is the market in Rome, the food market. We
That
lived with other
sounds
students.
so dreamy.
It
I
was
just
amazing.
honestly, it makes me think of the Roman holiday.
Well, we were young, and when we were on the program, all sorts of interesting things happened. One of my husband's professors was account, and he took us to his place in Verona, actually.
Lovely.
And so, I mean, it was a really interesting experience. And then we've gone back to Italy quite a few times with the kids. I think it's my husband's favorite place. Probably one of my favorite places to travel to. I haven't been there for a few years. But that's just one story. I lived in Denmark. We went back. I took my kids back to Denmark, to go through where I lived, and Sweden. We did a whole Scandinavian trip. Finland was amazing. Finland is, if you're a designer, Finland is the place to go. It's full of designers. And so I did a whole design tour when I was there. I just try to source out where I can buy interesting things to integrate into my jewelry, and to also gain inspiration. The inspiration just comes from moving around and just looking, just walking and listening and talking to people.
That's the best. When you talk about Morocco, like it really takes me back, because I was in Morocco for about a week, 10 days, invited by the government there. This is for Dakhla, and they were having this international fashion, music, arts festival. So amazing. I got to walk barefoot in the Western Sahara Desert and make a report for television. I was working for Fashion News Live, an Emmy nominated show. Just a different world. And I think it was 4-hour or 3-hour airplane ride from Paris.
Paris, yeah.
It just anything is possible sort of mindset, but it's you go from there, you go to London, you go to the south of France. It's 4-hour drive or train ride, and boom, different culture, different everything. So tell me since you started designing, some cities that stood out for you, that you're wow, I got this piece from there, and I have this story from Rome or Turkey or wherever you were. Are there a few interactions or stories that stand out for you above the rest?
Well, when I was in Morocco, for example, I'm fairly brave. A lot of people might not do what I do, but I was in Marrakesh, and I just decided, we were warned, you shouldn't go out alone as a woman or walk alone. I thought, no, I mean, what, it couldn't be that bad. So I took off on my own. My husband went somewhere else, and I just picked up my camera. Not visible. I think I took my iPhone. I didn't bring my good camera with me. I'm not going to carry a good camera while I'm walking. And I went to the market. I went to the market in Marrakesh, which is one of the biggest markets in Africa, and it was amazing. And I'm on my own, and I loved it. I mean, I walked around. I went into little alleyways. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. I braved it. I was offered mint tea, I don't know how many times, and I bought some really interesting pendants and things that I could integrate into my jewelry. I think I have a fairly good eye. I'll look at something and I'll go, I can use that in this or that, or I can make a necklace. And I just buy things that are interesting, and then I integrate them, I assemble them with my jewelry, or I'll take a wax mold of it and then have it replicated. But most of the time it's a one-of-a-kind piece. So Marrakesh, I love New York. We've traveled to New York many times. New York has really good wholesalers that I deal with, that I met when I was in Tucson, Arizona. And I haven't been to Tucson for a few years, but a lot of them are in New York, and I'll go into their showrooms and we'll talk. So New York is a very inspiring city. I think London and New York are two amazing cities to go to for inspiration if you're designing anything for the fashion industry. And I can't say that I'm a fashionista or a fashionable person, but I know my jewelry, and I've always looked at fashion magazines, and I look to see what people are wearing. And I've always been inspired by bigger jewelry, because there's a lot of little itty bitty jewelry out there that I'm just not interested in designing, because I find it really boring. But a lot of designers will buy, will design that minimalistic kind of jewelry, and I leave it up to them to do that.
I think it's different when you're wearing something on day to day, but for an event or a photo shoot,
Well,
or even
I think
for
you can
me,
wear this every day.
completely. But for example, for me, every day I will wear almost nothing. But I know when I want to stand out, I remember like Claudia would style me, who you know as well. And when I want to make a statement, when I'm on the red carpet, like of course completely you can wear it every day, but for me, like coming up to Paris Fashion Week and different things I have upcoming, I know I want to wear something that everyone's going to be like, where is that from? Where is that?
Absolutely,
Or
yeah.
even like if I'm going on a date, or even to the wedding on the weekend that's coming up in a few days, like my friend's wedding. If I want to wear something that I know is going to make a statement and be a part of me, yet at the same time be like wearable art. I feel like your jewelry is art. It's like art that I'm wearing. Like as soon as you came in and I saw this and I was like, wow, where is this from? Tell me this story. It is so unique. Like if you're going to someone invites you for dinner and you don't know many people, if you wear something like this, I know this is going to be a conversation starter.
Yeah, I'm like you. I don't wear jewelry all the time. I do Pilates and I'm in the gym 3 times a week. So of course I don't wear any jewelry. If I'm running out to the store, I always have earrings on. And I don't wear big, humongous earrings, but I wear earrings that are different. And sometimes I don't feel like wearing jewelry. I don't wear jewelry all the time. And I'm not poo-pooing, the minimalistic jewelry. I actually have a lot of jewelry that I designed.
And I have some of that.
Is minimalistic. But even my minimalistic jewelry is a little bit unique. It's not going to be the same as a lot of the minimalistic jewelry that you see out there. I try to make it more interesting.
It's like the Roman necklace that I got from you. It
Right.
was like the Roman coin. Like I love how unique it was. It's so fascinating because I can't go anywhere and be like, and the fact that you actually picked it up, made a print of it, and then you created this necklace. I love the fact when I get something from you, when I purchase something from you, it is you who's going there, not like some person I don't even know. So I love that concept and the fact that you're the one who's also designing it. I mean, I've always been very passionate about supporting local designers and someone who's here, who I get to see in a market. And that's why I really wanted you to come on the show, because I was like, people need to hear your story because your designs are so unique. And then I feel like when I wear it, I'm like, I want to go. I want to go to Rome. I've been to Italy. I've never made it to Rome. And when I would wear that, I should have worn it today, but whenever I would wear that little pendant necklace, I'm like, it's got this history attached to it.
I love the historical aspect of any jewelry. I love using Roman glass as well. I do markets because I love talking to people. I love selling directly. I do have an amazing website with beautiful photos, and I sell online, of course. And during the pandemic, my website did a lot better because people were really supportive of local. But I love doing the markets because at the markets I get to talk to people. I like to talk to people. I like to hear their story just as much as I like to tell them about each piece that they're looking at. And for me, that's what gives me joy. Being able to talk about my jewelry and talk about a little bit about the history, even the process about how I made it. I've been doing markets forever, even before I had a website, because online sales it's more recent. But when I started, online sales were non-existent. Facebook wasn't existent.
I think it's something so special. I mean, of course, online is amazing, and especially during COVID, we were all shopping online. I've never shopped online as I did when it was during COVID, and especially during lockdown. But it's something so special, like what you're saying, when you get to have the person right there and someone touches, and it's like, this is it's got weight to it. When earrings are dangling and you get to see how they're in the light. And then when you get to meet the person and you get to understand their story and their passion and their love for what they do. So do you have like every year like time carved out that you're like, okay, I'm going to travel to these places, or I'm gonna take like 3 months to travel? Do you have a specific schedule, or how does that work when you're going and you're going hunting? I almost feel like when you're going on your trips to find these interesting, whether coins or artifacts or pieces on your travels.
Well, usually it's the beginning of the year, the end of the year after all my markets are over. So, in January and February, that's a really good time for me to travel because there aren't as many markets out there, and it's a slower time of the year for jewelry sales online as well. So where we're going this year, we haven't decided, but it will be somewhere. Yeah, I'll probably go and visit my grandson and my daughter who lives abroad, and we'll integrate some sort of a trip on the side from that. Like last year, we went to Egypt. I don't know where it's going to be this year. It could be anywhere.
So when you were in Egypt, how long were you there for? Like, how do you give yourself like a month or a couple of weeks? Or
I only had 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, and we had an Egyptologist with us who taught us all about the history of Egypt. And it wasn't, I feel like it was enough time to see all the main places, but I would like to have explored it a little bit more. Will I go back to Egypt again? Yes, maybe no, I don't know. I mean, there's just so many other places I'd like to explore. I'd really like to go to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan because I think they're interesting culturally, architecturally, the history and the jewelry.
architecturally, like, I mean, I haven't been to Kazakhstan, but Uzbekistan I've been to. I was invited by the government there and went to 4 different cities. Everyone was so different than the other, and you're just like, wow, I feel like I'm in the 40 days and 40, or like one of those Arabic, like it's part of those ancient history tales, like, one of those stories that I've just been transported. Like, I didn't even know cities like that existed until I went to like Tashkent or Samarkand and Khiva, and Khiva was like a walled city. I can only imagine. Like, do you take photos like when you're there?
I'm actually a pretty good, I hate photography. I mean, I hate taking photos. I'm not good at working my camera. I have a good camera, but I've found that I just take photos with my iPhone now. And actually, they're pretty good photos because I think I have a pretty good eye. Morocco was amazing. Like, some of them look like paintings. Morocco is so beautiful to take photos of. But everywhere I go, I stop and I take interesting photos and I bring them back and I use them in my social media. I like to share them with people. I write a blog and I have an email that I send out to all the people who subscribe, and I'll share my trips with them and I'll share photos with them and explain, where my inspiration comes from. And it's pretty clear. Like, I have a pretty distinct style, so like anyone who's bought jewelry from me or knows my jewelry will know that it's an Irit Sorokin design, so they can look at it.
Yeah, I would say that's true, because when I hold your jewelry, or I remember Claudia is the one who actually, I met you before, but she was like, oh yes, I grabbed these pieces, and I've also seen your jewelry evolve over time, with like interesting pieces. And then I didn't really understand the story behind what you were doing, and I was like, wow, this is so fascinating. Like, you're inspiring me. Obviously, I'm not a jewelry designer, but I'm like, I love the fact or the idea of like going to these markets with this, and you're allowing your environment to inspire you and move you. So not only
Absolutely,
you have those story, I think like one of the amazing facts with your work is that anyone who holds one of your pieces or gets gifted a piece or gets it for a friend, you're not only supporting someone local, but you're also supporting like this journey and this process, this story, this history that is behind. So that is one of the things that I love about what you do. Do you have in your work, when you're creating a collection, do you have an idea of like, okay, this is what I'm going to create for fall winter 2023. This is what I'm going to do for 2024.
No.
No.
I do not create collections. I look at my jewelry as being all season. So when you buy a piece of my jewelry, you should be able to wear it any time of the year. And I don't believe in doing a collection for 2023 fall, 2023 fall, or spring 2024. I just design. I design intuitively. I'm in my studio. I'll design a bunch of pieces. I'll take photos of them. And you could call it a collection. You could call it whatever you want. But those are the pieces. Most of them are one of a kind. Some of them are three of a kind. But there's no collection, which makes it a little bit more difficult to sell wholesale and to be in many stores. A long time ago, my husband said to me, he goes, well, why don't you have it outsourced and have many made, like have 100 made, and then you can sell in lots of stores. And I just never did, and I don't think I ever could. I think I would be bored doing that, having to assemble 100 of the same pieces or even have someone do it for me. I just decided that my business model was going to be probably more difficult, in that I was going to be the one in my studio putting it all together, coming up with interesting and different designs. And I never know sometimes how something is going to evolve. Like, I literally sit things down on my bench, on my table, and they just kind of evolve. And then if I really like the piece and I have more of the same pendant or some of the same beads, I'll create a few more of the same thing.
That's amazing. It's
Yeah.
like being, like you're connected to your own truth instead of like doing 100 or like a piece that is made in like, mass produced in a different country. You're making it here. It sounds like you're very much in touch with your integrity and your spirit. You talk about the intuitive process of creating. Tell me about that.
Well, I think that first of all, I see things in my head. I'm able, like, my studio is organized with beads and colors and material, and I have a really good visual memory. So when I'm sitting and I'm designing, I can actually remember the pendant that I picked up maybe 5 years ago from Morocco, and I'll remember some of the colors and some of the beads, and I'll go, I think that piece will look really good with that, and I'll take the pendant, I'll put it down, or I'll just take beads, and then I know where things are in my studio, and then I'll pick things out and I'll lay them out, and it's just sort of an intuition that I know that something will look good that they'll look good together. I can't explain it.
Can you tell me, you were mentioning earlier that you fell into jewelry designing. Like, what were you doing before? Because it really sounds like you're so in touch with, like, that when you're designing or even when you're traveling to find these interesting coins or artifacts that you turn into jewelry, you really feel, what I'm sensing is that you're very connected to that flow, to that intuition. Like, tell me, like, what were you doing before and how this came to be?
I was involved in interior decorating. As I said, I have a degree in art history, so I've taken lots of art courses, and I've learned a lot about the history, architecture and history of art. I've read a lot. I'm married to a man who studied architecture and geography. So I do have a sense of design. I do have a design background. I understand design, and I think I've integrated all that knowledge into not really being aware, but just I've integrated it into my designing. And I think also just from having traveled and the exposure, that I've had. So it's hard to explain, but it just comes to me. I can look at somebody and know that something will look good on somebody, and or something
like
won't look
the
good
earrings
on.
I'm wearing today. They just somehow happen to match the dress. They're very me. They're very me. So as soon as you brought them. I was like, I'm going to wear these beautiful earrings. Do you imagine how something is going to look on someone or have a person in mind when you're designing?
No, I actually do not. I just design jewelry that I like, because I think that my jewelry should be able to be worn by anyone and everybody. In fact, I have a lot of men who wear my jewelry.
Really?
Yeah.
I can see that. I can really see that.
I some of my rings, even some of my necklaces, and I always appreciate it when men come up and tell me how gorgeous my stuff is, and then they try the jewelry on, and it looks great on them.
And your jewelry has ended up in a lot of photo shoots. Have any celebrities worn them?
I think on The Bachelorette, they came to Vancouver. They bought some of the stylists bought some jewelry. It probably has, but I'm probably not aware of it, because I used to sell in retail, and they've gone in and they've bought my jewelry. And also some of the stylists, like Claudia, have picked it up and have used it in their photo shoots. It's been in a lot of magazines, newspapers. My jewelry's been, in quite a few publications.
I know I've worn it for like my last show and for photo shoots and stuff.
It's very, some of it is very editorial, and some of it is it is minimalistic, but it's not like the typical minimalistic jewelry. So a lot of the editorial big pieces have been used in a lot of photo shoots.
Tell me about the earrings you're wearing, because they look like art.
Well, it's just an old sort of a tile that I saw when I was in Jerusalem, and I just I brought it back, and I took a mold of it, and I had it casted. And I've made actually so it can be worn as I've made necklaces from it, and I've made earrings.
I love it as earrings, because again, one of those pieces that you can have on and someone will be like, oh, what's the story? Where did this come from? And that's what I love about your jewelry. It's a conversation starter piece. It's a piece of art that you can wear. So I know you get your inspiration from your travels, but where else do you get your inspiration from?
History and fashion. For example, when I've been to Paris quite a few times, and Paris has a whole wholesale, you're aware of it. The fashion industry has a whole wholesale section that's kind of out of the way. And so when I've gone to Paris, I've always researched, well, where can I find interesting jewelry findings and things to do with, wholesale supplies for jewelry. So I look it up, and then I'll call the store, and I'll find out if it's open to the public. And so one of the stores that I go to, it's actually a wholesale supplier. They've been around for over 100 years. It's all art deco, art nouveau. It's beautiful architecture. You walk in, you see big posters of Chanel and old jewelry, and that the store, the people in the store, they're not very friendly, and it's not open to the public. I actually had to show them a business license, but it's divided up into sections, and I love going in there because in the front, it's a lot of the more current stuff, but when you go to the back, it's divided up into, I guess, different times. So you go in there, and there's little cardboard boxes on shelves with a ladder that moves back and forth, and the finding or whatever, the bead, whatever it is on the outside of the box. It's very dusty back there. Some of those pieces probably come from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. This place has literally been there for over 100 years. And I'll see things that I like, and someone will bring things down for me. I don't know what it is. It's like a finding. It's a button. It's a bead. It's a pendant. It's something. And whatever is interesting to me, I'll pick it up. I'll buy it, and I'll take it back to my studio. I never know. Like, sometimes I know what I'm going to do with the piece, but a lot of the times I buy supplies based on what I love, something that I love about it, the color, the texture, something that looks interesting, something that tells a story, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. It might sit in my studio for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then one day I'll decide to pull it out and design something with it. And it all, and I did, whatever I design is always current, like it's always in fashion. I never like to think of my pieces as going out of fashion. Like I think you can wear this forever. It can be fashionable today, it can be fashionable 10 years from now.
I completely agree,
So
because of the history to it. There's, you know, and like you said, you modernize these beautiful, you know, we don't know, this could be like a few hundred years old, but I think that is the beauty of it. Wow. I love everything you're wearing today. Thank you.
I mean, I love the trends, but my jewelry is trendy and it's not. And yet somehow it seems to go well at any time.
They're classic pieces.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Now the show is called Inspired Life Vancouver. I love asking everyone, is there a particular spot you like going to in the city that inspires you, that you love? It could be the art gallery or a cafe or like outdoors.
I love the art gallery. Thank you for asking. I also love where I live, the nature, the beach, and I love the endowment grounds, the forest. So you don't have to go really far in Vancouver to be inspired. I'm also inspired by some of the markets that I go to and meeting people. But yes, the art gallery is, and some of the stores, some of the fashion stores, some of the local stores that sell handmade local designs. But the endowment grounds is beautiful. You're in the forest, you're in nature. And then of course I live close to the beach. So just the beach, the ocean, the colors of the sand and the ocean and the trees. Those are all wonderful colors.
Nature is so healing. And, you know, I love Paris. I love spending time in Paris and all of Europe. But there's something so special about Vancouver. And I'm so glad that you took the time to come out and sit down with us and chat today. And if you go to one of the markets, you can make sure to say hi to Irit. And if you were inspired today, make sure to let us know. Irit, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me, Zara. You're great.
My pleasure. My pleasure.